Welcome to Writing in the Weeds. This is episode 121, and thank you for joining us. Today, we're going to talk about the idea of belonging. So, last week we were talking about deciding to be the person that you want to be. In order to make change, you want to decide that you're going to be the person that you want to be. It's kind of like the first step, right? And then we kind of alluded to this a little bit in the last week's episode, the idea of belonging. And we'll dive into this a little bit deeper once we get going. But do you feel like you belong? And if you do, that's amazing, right? Do that more. But if you don't feel like you belong, let's dig into where that comes from and how we can actually change that, and also why it's important, right? So, I'm Natasha Lockie. I am a business builder, I'm a mountain bike coach, life coach, and basically where we come from with this is we're pulling our experience from our coaching and also just our experience of running businesses and being out in the world, taking risks and doing things that really ride you into the weeds, and ways that we've figured out how to keep moving, even though sometimes it gets a little bit tough. I'm joined by my fabulous co host, Ginny. I'll let her introduce herself and then we'll get rocking and rolling.
Yeah, I am Jenny Brandon. I'm an animal communicator and energy healer for animals and their people too. If you are struggling in your pet relationships and would like to get a little more insight on what your pet might be thinking and feeling about certain situations, that is a great reason to have a session together.
Awesome. So, I think belonging's an interesting one. And I was actually listening to a podcast the other day, and it was a podcast on how to be more successful in podcasts. And it was really interesting because it triggered
Yep.
my feeling of not belonging. It triggered a lot of things because they're like, oh, yeah, when we started working together, we were doing like 10,000 downloads a month. And now we're doing 20,000 downloads a month. I was instantly like, I don't belong here. I shouldn't listen to this podcast. We're not even podcasters because we're not even close to that. And I think this is very much a part of what we do when we don't feel like we belong. We instantly exclude ourselves and we want to leave the room. Or we try and stand out in the room whilst feeling like we don't actually belong there. And these are the two things that we're going to talk about. If you're not good enough, then clearly you can't be there. But how do you become good enough? Then there's the other side of things, that surround yourself with the people that are doing the things that you want to do, and be in rooms that will enable you to grow because you'll see what's possible. But if you walk into those rooms and you decide that you don't belong there, then how can you ever be what you want to be?
Yeah. This is a really interesting topic because for a lot of my life, I haven't always felt like I've belonged in certain places and spaces. Um, some of that I think is due to my physical issues. I have actual orthopedic challenges that make me not physically normal compared to the majority of the rest of the world. And so I was bullied as a kid, I was picked on and ostracized, and just like, why are you different? The questions from children who some at the time were not even mean, but were like, what's wrong with you because you're different. And so belonging to me is a challenging issue. But I think the thing that I have learned over the years, especially due to that childhood history of this, is that if you don't belong to yourself first, you really can't belong to any other group. And so for me, it's been about finding my way for myself internally. And the better I get at that, the more places I do belong. And the more that I easily just I fit in places, and I am accepted in places and welcomed in places when I belong to myself first. And I feel like that's the starting point of this whole conversation. I don't always agree with the statement that if you don't love yourself, you can't love someone else or you can't receive love from someone else. I don't necessarily 100% agree with that, but there is some truth to that. And I think there's some truth to the belonging piece, right? If you don't belong to yourself, how can you belong anywhere else in the world? If you don't know what's home for you, how can you belong somewhere else?
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I think that belonging somewhere, like belonging to yourself, is really, really important because we don't want to shrink to fit, right? So we don't want to walk
Yeah.
into a room and we need to change or feel like we need to be different. We are not our actions, right? We are us, despite whether we're making great actions or not so great actions. We are still us. Our actions do not define who we are and what we're capable of. They expand upon it, right? So we can change our actions, but it's not who we are. So if we're walking into a room and we know who we are and we know what we're capable of, then we can belong in that room as we are. You know, we can belong in the podcasting space without needing to be Mel Robbins, who's doing hundreds and thousands and millions of downloads for episodes. And we can still fit in. We're still podcasters. We're still reaching people. However, there might be actions that we can take that would enable us to expand our reach. And just to hone in on exactly what you just said, when we belong to ourselves, then we're able to see possibility. If we immediately exit stage right and decide that we don't belong, then we're never able to take advantage. And then I think the next step is, do you want to be in that space? Do you want to belong? And if you're in a space where, like the example of, you've got a group of friends, and if you don't go to the parties, basically you're not part of the group. So you didn't show up to the party, eventually you don't get invited to the parties, you're not really part of that group. Do you really want to be part of a group that you have to do certain things in order to belong? As opposed to you being able to be you and still belong regardless. Even though you weren't there, everyone thinks you were there because you are part of that group.
Yeah. I kind of feel like it's a continuum, right? So we belong in a podcaster group just as much as somebody with 20,000 downloads. We do the thing, even though it doesn't look exactly like the ones that Mel Robbins does. But that's where it starts to be different, right? Because you can belong to a group and you can be somewhat different. And I feel like that sometimes in the horse world because my version of doing things with horses is very different from other people's version of doing things with horses. I don't know that I'll ever get around to competing. I'm just not sure that it's ever something that I want to pursue. That's fine. There are a lot of people who that's their whole life with horses. It revolves around competitions and competing, and that's also fine. I'm a biker who probably will never do super challenging mountain bike trails, just not really what I'm interested in on my bike, but I'm still a biker. I still ride my bike. I'm still part of that group. I'm not going to also do 100-mile road races either. That's not my jam either. So I can be a light biker and still belong in that group. Maybe not with every subgroup, but I belong in that group. And I think that's something that is important to be aware of is not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, right? We're podcasters, but we're not in the 20,000 download yet group. So what? We're still podcasters. So just because you don't meet X criteria doesn't mean that you don't belong in that sort of umbrella group. And I think that's what's one of those keys that we don't keep moving the bar, right? So when we started out podcasting, we're like, okay, we're going to try to be podcasters. And first year was a little bumpy. We didn't get an episode a week out. Second year, we got a lot closer. Third year, we were pretty much there. Might have only missed one or two. But what's important is through that entire time, we could call ourselves podcasters. We can still call ourselves podcasters. What we often do to ourselves is say, oh, well, now I'm producing an episode a week, but I'm still not a podcaster because I don't have 20,000 downloads or a million followers or whatever it is. We continually keep moving that bar away from ourselves, even though we are accomplishing something that gives us that belonging. And it's just the way we keep things away. It's just the same way that we prevent ourselves from getting to a point where we have some kind of success.
Totally. Well, and the next point to that, I think, is the idea that a lot of the time when you don't feel like you belong, it's because as a kid you had some sort of event, some sort of traumatic something or other that made you feel like you didn't belong. And so, quite often, what people will do is when they don't feel like they belong, they try to stand out. And so then they're like, okay, so we don't really belong as podcasters because we're not doing these numbers that we want to do. So we're going to go and we're going to do everything we can. And we're going to stand out amongst podcasters. But we don't belong to podcasters. We're just going to try and stand out. So now we're trying to stand out to a group of people that we don't feel like we belong to. And so then there becomes like this disconnect. It's like your friend group at high school. It's like, well, I don't really feel like I belong to them, so I'm going to try and stand out. I'll be the jester, or I'll be the whatever, right? I'll be the mean girl. I'll be the whatever you want to decide to be. And so now you're trying to stand out, but you still don't really fit because you're trying to stand out in a place where you don't feel like you belong. If you don't feel like you belong in there, then you're not going to connect with the people that are in there because you're not one of them. You're still separated.
Yeah.
Until we decide that we belong, and then from that space we can stand up, because we don't want to disappear into the group. Belonging doesn't mean shrinking to fit and so then no one notices you. Belonging means that you belong to that group and then you stand out. That was the coolest thing about my friend group in high school, was each and every one of us, like I used to look around, we'd go to the mall, very seldom. We'd go to the mall and we'd be like, I don't know, 8 to 10 of us. And we did not look like your average group of teenage girls. A group of girls would walk past us and they were all wearing the same clothes. And they were all basically different versions of the same person. And then there was us, and we were all so individual. Each one of us had our own individual style. We were just like this motley crew of people that hadn't really belonged anywhere else, and we had chosen to belong to each other. And we all stood out. Every single one of us stood out within that group of people. And we loved each other for the fact that we stood out. And if I think about it now, it's like, yeah, if somebody was missing, later on, you didn't really notice that they were missing, you would talk to them like they were there. And they'd be like, dude, I wasn't at that thing. I'd go away for months at a time and I'd come back and they'd be talking to me like I was there. I'm like, guys, I was away for a couple of months. I wasn't even here. Because I belonged, I was always part of whatever was going on. And it was the same with every one of us. And it's amazing that I've had so many issues with belonging, because I really had this group where, because none of us belonged, but we chose to belong to each other, and we chose to each stand out on our own merits and be exactly who we were and accept each other. We were a group of people that had chosen to accept each other as we were and not be anyone different. And I should remember that.
Right. Sometimes our childhood selves actually had some pretty smart experiences somewhere along the way.
Mm-hmm.
What this makes me think of is any famous person that you've heard of for any reason. So whether they're a sports person or actor, actress, artist, songwriter, any of that, they belong to a certain group, right? And the reason that you know of them is because they stand out in their group, but it's because they belonged in that group. And you don't really get to stand out in a group until you do have that belonging. And each one of those people, anybody you can think of, has spent a very long amount of time belonging before they got the notoriety that they have. And every single one of them has a story, a place they started. And we love the underdog stories. We love the diamond in the rough, the people who were found singing in coffee shops, or even the football players. There's a famous football player who was from our area in Maryland who was sleeping on the streets as a kid because his family was super poor. And he got fostered by somebody, and it's one thing after another. But he had to belong in that group for a long time before he, quote, made it big. And so you don't just get to jump to the notoriety. You don't get to jump to 20,000 downloads. Anybody who says they have has put a lot of legwork in somewhere else. Because sometimes you can lateral, right? You can move across groups and take what you have from one group and move it into another, right? Arnold Schwarzenegger was an actor and then he became the governor of California, okay? You can move that way, but you can't do that until you belong. This is just one of those things that you kind of have to figure out for yourself. There's no magic formula. Nobody else can tell you how to do it or where to find it or how to make it work for any group specifically. Like, you just have to find your own way and find your own people so that you do belong. If you worry more about that than the standing out, I think that it will naturally fall into place.
Yeah, because you'll be you. And as long as you are you, you'll stand out because you're the only one that's you, right? And if you don't fit in as you, then you don't belong to that group. And that's fine. Go and find another group that you belong to, right? And I think the other key thing to this is the idea that you can't buy your way in. So often we make the mistake, especially in this world that we're in, it's like, well, okay, so what's this lady selling? If I buy her coaching package, then maybe we'll be able to belong to that group of high-end podcasters. Because if we buy the coaching package, then we'll be closer to that person. Therefore, we will belong in that group of people. But that doesn't work, because if you're just trying to buy your way in, you still don't belong. Buying your way in is not going to make you belong. Let's go back to and I don't know if this reference is going to work for everybody, but in New Zealand we had things called tuck shops. I guess a school cafeteria, but we didn't have a cafeteria. We just had the tuck shops, and that was where you went and you bought your little grilled cheese toastie or your cookie or whatever, right? And there was this kid in my class, and he didn't really feel like he belonged, and he tried to stand out, and he tried to buy his way in. So he would go to the tuck shop and he would buy a big bag of pineapple lumps. They used to be the best candy ever. And then he would give them away. And so he would basically try and buy friends by giving away lots of candy. And so he was popular because everyone was like, yeah, give me candy. But it didn't necessarily mean we liked him anymore. We just knew him as the kid that would give the candy. So, cool, I'll be friends with you because you're going to give me candy. That also doesn't work.
No, it doesn't work.
Right? You can't buy friends, because if people only love you because of what you're giving to them, then you're standing out again. You're standing out in a group of people you don't belong to. And it's even worse because they're kind of
you only belong insofar as serving that need, and that's it. And you won't truly connect on a deeper level. And that's the question that I think is important to ask about, like your example of the coaching package, right? When you're in business and you're looking to gain more information, if you're making that purchase because that person has notoriety, the one thing that we don't know is how many people have purchased those packages that did not have success or did not meet that 20,000 podcaster numbers. You don't know the success rate. I would even dare say you don't even know that at universities for the most part. You don't know how many people are getting hired to do a job that they just spent hundreds of thousands of dollars getting a degree on. You don't know. And so if you don't really belong before you make that purchase, it will not make a difference for you. And if you're not very careful about the person that you're making the purchase from, if it is an individual in a coaching situation, you don't know what their success rate is either. And the better their success rate, the more likely you are to gain the information that's needed. But there is no guarantee. It's still an inside job that you have to do to figure out how to belong with or without that knowledge. There's an awful lot of people with extensive degrees and hundreds of $1,000s in debt who don't have jobs in those fields because for whatever reason, they aren't belonging to that field.
No, that's a really good point. I really like that, because unless you choose to belong to the engineering field and you go into university to be an engineer and you're like, okay, I'm going to be an engineer, you're going to take the steps that will create success. I have a degree in marketing and international business, and when I was at school, I was like, I don't want to belong to this group. I do not want to be part of this. We were doing our researching piece where we had to go out and do surveys. And the way we were taught it was basically we were doing a survey to find out people's information so that we could figure out how to sell to them. And I was like, so we're figuring out how to manipulate people? And
That's what marketing is.
That's what marketing is. And so I was like, okay, I need to use this power for good. So when I graduated, I became part of the zero waste movement, where it was all about how can we market to people so that they use less, so there's less waste. And that made me feel good about what we were doing. But the idea of manipulating people into consumerism was like, I don't want to belong to this. I choose not to. So now I have to figure out how I can use this power for good. Yeah. How can we use this information in order to help lift up the world and make people better? I think that was the turning point where I was like, I just want to be part of a world where everything I do enhances other people's experience. And whether that's through taking you mountain biking and making it so you have more fun on your bike, or giving you skills and insights and tools that will mean that you have more fun as a human being, or allowing you to cross the finish line in whatever goal or dream that you have. How can I help you get out of your own way so you can get to the goal that you're trying to achieve? That's how I want to use that. But yeah, I did not want to belong to a group of people that were manipulating people.
What I think is really key about your story is that sometimes we do need to go through experiences to learn what we don't want to do or what does not resonate with us. Sometimes those learnings are a little more expensive than others, but I had a similar experience when I attempted to go to school to get an equestrian studies degree. I didn't grow up with horses, but I had that deep knowing that I wanted to be around them and with them and work with them. And I didn't know what that looked like because I had never been around them. And so when I got close to graduating, I found out there were places that offered an equestrian sciences degree. And so I attempted to go to a university to get the degree. The problem was the university was really bad. It was a very small school, and so the quality was just not the same as many other places. We'll just say that. And the program was extremely conventional in the way that they taught horseback riding and all of that. The simplest way I can explain that is they sort of try to treat horses like bikes, right? Like, if you do this, then this is the result you're going to get. Well, the problem is horses are individual, in my opinion, sentient beings. It doesn't work that way.
Like a human.
And they're also... right? They're also functioning off of our emotions. They're responding to our emotions and our emotional state. And I was miserable. I was absolutely 100% miserable. And I felt like I was failing because I just couldn't grasp a lot of the concepts they were like shouting at me because it just didn't make sense. And so I left after a semester, and it took a long time before I found my way to horses again. But that experience gave me the awareness. I didn't know it at the time, but when I began to find horses again later, it was a completely different experience. And I was like, oh, it can be so much better for me and for the horse. I can understand these concepts. I'm not an idiot the way I felt when I was in classes. And so it just showed me like, hey, that is the normal world. That's the way the majority of people still work with and teach people to ride horses. It just is. But that's not the world that I want to belong to. I belong in the horse world very much, but I do not belong in that very normal, practiced way of doing things. But I can appreciate that experience because I recognize what people have been through and what horses have been through in the name of teaching people to ride and in the name of being a, quote, ridden horse. And so sometimes it's helpful to have those experiences. So even when you don't feel like you belong, sometimes the reason you're there is to figure out, okay, maybe there's a different way to do this. Maybe my belonging is actually going to be part of paving a new path or exploring a different way of being. And what I love is that now, 20 plus years later, after that experience, there are a lot more people that are rejecting that way of teaching and training. It's very slow because change like that in an institutionalized, systematized way of doing things is very slow. But more and more of us are speaking up and saying, hey, it doesn't work for the horse. It doesn't work for the human. It's not a healthy way for bodies to do things. Let's try something different. And so sometimes that's the part of the not belonging. You shouldn't fight it sometimes because you learn that, hey, there is a different way to do things, and it causes you to go down that road to find it. And I think that's the value of the progress we can bring, is that sometimes when we don't belong, that's what we need to know about in order for us to belong.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think it really just circles back to the concept of know yourself first. Know who you
Yeah.
are, know what you want, know where you're coming from, and make your decisions based on that. And you have to belong to me, and I have to belong to you in order for there to be belonging. And if those two things aren't true, then there's a different place to be.
Yeah.
And there's so many different examples, there's so many ways to talk about this, but at the end of the day, really choosing to belong to a group is what you get to do. And if you're part of something and you choose not to belong but you want to stand out, you're going to struggle. And this one example, you're in this Facebook group, but you never post and you never comment. So you're choosing to not belong because you're excluding yourself. But then you might post something and you want everyone to see you and no one sees you, and so you get confirmation that you don't belong. Just on the basic algorithm, if you've never commented on anybody else's stuff and you're not part of the group and you've not contributed in any way, the algorithm is not going to show your stuff to anybody. So just because no one sees your stuff, it doesn't mean you don't belong there. It just means that you're not part of the algorithm. And because there might be 5,000 people in the group, and if the coach doesn't see you, you can't be like, well, there's evidence I don't belong. They didn't see, but they commented on that person and somebody else. But we take all these things like, oh, well, clearly we don't belong. Well, no,
Yeah.
you just weren't seen in that space. But if you continue to be part of it, you continue to show up and do the things that people do within that group because you belong in that group. You continue, I don't belong, I'm not a bike rider, I'm not going to ride my bike. Well, then, yeah, you're not going to belong. But if you show up and you go on bike rides and maybe go to the bar afterwards, or maybe you don't, you still belong. You don't have to go to the bar after every ride in order to be part of the group. The fact that you show up and you go for the biking, that's the important part, right? You can't be a biker if you don't bike. You can't be
Yeah.
part of something if you don't do the thing that it's part of. If you're part of a friend group, it doesn't matter if you don't go to the parties, but as long as you're there when people need you and you're truly a friend to your friends, then you'll belong and you'll be part of the experience. Now,
Yeah.
if it's a beer drinking group
Go
and you
ahead.
don't drink beer, like, you probably don't belong.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to be careful about that. Trying to belong in a group that doesn't do the thing that you want to do or that does something that you don't want to do is tricky. But thank God for the internet, right? Part of the reason that I know that there is a shift in what's going on with the way people work with horses is because of the internet. We can find each other,
Yeah.
and that was actually, I mean, it was, like I said, 20 plus years ago at this point, but that was how I started to find the people that were doing things differently with horses, was because of the internet. And once I started to find out, number one, that a different way existed, then I was able to actually find people that were local to me who were doing things differently that I could do. And so in the beginning, I started working with a lady that I found on the internet on a forum because, Facebook didn't exist back then. And So I met her, and there was an extra horse at the barn where she kept her horse. And so I could work with that horse because no one was doing anything with it. So I was able to do stuff with that horse. And that's literally how I got into the world, is one thing led to another, but it was because of the internet, right? And I think the internet is so powerful for figuring out where you belong, because you can find anything and everything that you want to figure out what works for you and what is good for you and what feels good. You can
There,
get sucked down some awful deep rabbit holes that aren't healthy for you, but I think that it's a positive tool on the whole as long as we manage our own use of it.
on just on that subject, the degree of weird and wonderful and crazy groups that are available to you,
Yeah.
that you can literally belong anywhere, and it is a scary, whacked out world when you really start to know what kind of groups there are, and the types of people that do very fascinating things, and they can find each
Stay
other.
out of the dark corners of the internet, but yeah.
But yeah, like you
I'm
can.
sure if you wanted to find bike riders who were also interested in underwater basket weaving, there's probably a group out there for that. Who knows?
Probably, yeah. You can belong anywhere, and it is a decision. And you can belong
Yeah.
nowhere if you choose not to. But at the end of the day, trying to stand out and not belong is not going to work. And constantly believing you just don't belong will mean that you just don't belong. So the point
Yeah.
to this is choose to belong in places where you want to be, and then show up as you, not as somebody else, not as someone seeking to belong by standing out in the group and doing things that you think will make you stand out, but instead do things that make it so you belong. Be you. Show up for people. Show up for yourself.
Yeah. Yes.
And when you do
Yeah.
that,
I think that's it.
yeah, things will. And I think just tailoring in on the whole deciding to be the person, it's like, okay, I'm deciding to be the person who goes to the gym every day. Now I can choose to belong to the group of people. You can go to the gym every day. You can be the type of person that goes to the gym every day and still feel like you don't belong in that group.
Yeah.
And that's going to make it tough, because then you're going to be someone who shows up in weird clothing, or you're going to try and bench too much, or you're going to try and stand out, and people will see you, but they won't be inviting you out for drinks afterwards because you'll be the weird person who does weird things, right? But if you just choose to show up and be supportive and be friendly, people will appreciate it. If you exclude yourself, you will be excluded. If you include yourself, then you will be included. I live in a place where there's all these beautiful big houses, and I'm living in a camper in my jungle. And it's like, I can choose to believe I don't belong with all these people because they're building big, fabulous houses. Or I can decide that I belong because I'm just like them and I've made the trek down here and I'm living an alternative life. And that's okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been a
I think
very
that wraps it
glitchy.
up.
Yeah, it's been a very glitchy episode. Hopefully, on you guys' end, when you're listening to this, you cannot see the technical difficulties that we're having because Tash clicked the wrong button and joined the wrong group on her Starlink, one that she did not belong to. And therefore,
It's all right. We'll smooth it out in editing, right?
exactly. And hopefully, I'll fix my Starlink issues because now I've got internet issues as well. But that's okay. I am Natasha Lockie. I am here to help you cross the finish line with your dreams. Get out of your own way. What is it you're trying to do? Are you trying to launch a website for your jewelry business? Are you trying to get your yoga business up and create an online course? Whatever it might be that you are wanting to do, I can help you do that. And I'm also a mountain bike coach, a life coach, and I'm working very hard on figuring out the ways that we can support you guys more. So stay tuned. We will be launching a course here one day. We will have some resources for you guys. And this week, I'm going to get our Substack onto subscription. So if you are someone that wants to support us, it's kind of the buy us a coffee kind of method. You can join our Substack group and you can pay for it monthly. You'll get the same thing at this point in time as you'll get for free. But if you love what we're doing, you love our content that we're putting out, we would love the support. So thank you for joining us. You can find me at Betty Gohard. You can find me on Facebook as Natasha Lockie. And I've been a little bit quiet lately, so I'm just going to leave it at those spots.
Yeah, and I am Jenny Brandon. I'm an animal communicator and energy healer for animals and their people too. If you are struggling with your pet or you've got a lot going on as we approach the holidays here, please do reach out, because there are a lot of different ways that I can provide support that will help make life easier for you and your pet as you navigate challenging and stressful times. You can find me on the web at soulpetconnections.com and on Substack, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube under the same handle. So thank you for joining us so much on this wild ride today. We love having you along. If you would please click like, comment, and share, we would love to hear from you. And we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great week.